Yeah, welcome back to the Stuff or Whatever podcast. Your host, BQuanchi here. We got a very special podcast this week, but before we get started, I always like to say the best way to support me and the channel is to like, comment, and subscribe. You know, on YouTube, X, Twitter, and Twitch are the three main ones. Links are in the descriptions. There are more longer gaming streams on Twitch, back to VODs on the YouTube channel, as well as some Let's Play stuff. And whatever I feel like throwing on the channel, just throwing spaghetti at the walls, including this little solo podcast. But I did make a post. There are going to be more uploads in terms of the Let's Play to twice a week. So we'll see how that is. There's been a lot of stuff I've been wanting to play, capture, stuff like that. I like the Let's Play because I feel like they are a little bit more digestible, more appealing. Shorter, kind of thing. So sometimes they perform a little bit better. But I'm just an itty bitty teeny tiny channel, so just see what works. But at the end of the day, it's a hobby, so who knows? But the main thing I wanted to talk about on this podcast is the recent, I don't know if you want to call it controversy, but the big news with the Yuzu Switch emulator being shut down by Nintendo. I did watch a few videos about it. I don't know too much about modern emulators. A lot of stuff I'm not too experienced with. I am with the much older ones too, but I think a lot of times I never really modded a console and all that. Just what I can get to run on my computer. That's not too complicated, but I thought it was very interesting. But yeah, I think it was a week or so ago. Yuzu was getting sued, and then they settled and shut down for $2.3 million to be paid to Nintendo. And there's a lot of opinions about it, and I know a lot of people complain about Nintendo being a crappy company and stuff like that too. And I don't know, I'm still kind of a Nintendo, at least when it comes to console, I definitely lean on Nintendo, but a PC for a lot of it as well. So I'm not like a Nintendo fanboy, but it's one of the consoles I kind of lean towards as well. Because the big thing about the emulator is piracy and all that, which I feel like it's a given. Like, even with older ones, a lot of people think when it comes to emulation to pirated games. And there was that statement that Yuzu had that kind of felt like forced, maybe prepared even maybe by Nintendo and stuff like that. Say like they never intended for piracy and this and that. And there's a lot of factors going on as well. Because I think the main big appeal is for preservation, or that term used a lot when it comes to emulators, especially with this recent one. Because the idea is you actually have the hardware, you actually have the game, but maybe you want to play it on a computer. Or some good valid points I heard as well is you want to adjust the format or mod it in a certain way, or use a different controller than Nintendo hardware and stuff like that. So it's other preferences. I can especially see with the frame rate thing being a huge motivator to lean on emulation, especially with the Nintendo consoles not being the most powerful, very lacking. That's always been a constant complaint, but it's from everyone, not just non-Nintendo fanboys, but Nintendo. I think maybe Nintendo fanboys more so. Heard that as well. I think what also got Yuzu in trouble is they had step-and-step guide how to use it. And they also had the Patreon where they were getting money on a monthly basis. I forget the exact figure, but it's like you're making money off it. So I think that kind of got Nintendo motivated. I'm trying to think the other story too. I know there was some Bowser guy who got sued as well. So it can be very troublesome. I feel like some of the people that complain don't really support Nintendo in the first place. They're just mad because it can't steal games for free. And yeah, it's a complicated topic to talk about in terms of who's in the right, who's in the wrong, and stuff like that. It's a shame too because I heard a lot of cool things about Nintendo hardware being modded, and kind of the more recent ones like the 3DS, the Wii, the Wii U. I think they can do really cool things, even like homebrew, which I don't know too much about, but I know there's some really cool unofficial Nintendo stuff you can do with those consoles and hardware that's really cool on all that. So I guess people get worried if they did actually go into court instead of settle with this set of precedents with other emulations, especially with other consoles like PlayStation, but maybe Xbox. I don't know. I know a lot of Xbox stuff, since it's Microsoft, you see on PC anyways. Because I know what the big thing with Nintendo is that they probably had the biggest first party support or console exclusives and stuff, exclusives and all that. So it's yeah, it's just very interesting to talk about. Although one thing I have to say with the lawsuit that was kind of unfair, is that again I've seen some videos. I know some of the highlights was Nintendo, in a sense, blaming Yuzu, the developers. I forget all like the big company's name and stuff like that, but blamed them for the latest Zelda game, Tears of a Kingdom, being leaked like 2 weeks early, and that's not necessarily true. Like I think maybe that was I'm not sure how many emulators are out there for Switch, but I think maybe that was one was used. But allegedly, it was like a supplier, someone who had the physical one ahead of time, yanked it, dumped a ROM, and then spread it online. Like it wasn't Yuzu spreading the game. Especially with these interesting note as well, because I also hear that they had issues with the leaked game, and people had to like figure it out real quick and put in like homemade patches or whatever, because to get the game actually work, which usually would definitely not be able to do. At least wouldn't be smart for them to do it to like really encourage piracy of unreleased game. I think that's what I'm trying to think back to the post as well was made, but yeah, especially like games before release, and that sure I think that just pissed Nintendo off, and they kind of looked at the company as a scapegoat, or just like I don't know, whatever. They're getting the money with that 2.3 million, but it's pretty much people doing I guess you could say illegal or not in terms of a big company and stuff like that too, because I can get that feeling like seeing a big huge company take down someone small and like, oh, that's bullshit, that's crappy and stuff like that. Especially since what is the recent news that Nintendo is the biggest, at least profitable company in Japan of currently, and all that. But it's like it is their property. It is like technically stealing. Like if it was a small indie game studio with the games being leaked and spread and stuff like that, people will be more for the game company than the whoever's emulating it and all that. So. And it also makes you kind of think, because I know, like I mentioned with the Tears of the Kingdom, like it just wasn't working with the initial leaked ROM. And what if game companies, developers do that almost as a practice to like make games not playable without day one patches? And what if that's the thing, is like they intentionally make the game a certain way, then with day one patches, it's actually playable on release. You kind of prevent piracy. Well, that kind of sucks for like people who don't have good internet, although and it's a common thing anyways, but with like trying to preserve physical copies and stuff like that, so that's kind of like the motivation to use it to preserve, like dump ROMs and keep it indefinitely, because hardware goes down, cartridges can go down over time, consoles and stuff like that, so not everything is finite, but you can kind of keep things nice and well managed. But still, it's like if you break a game or lose it, you have to buy it again. Oh, there's also eShops as well. Then you also worry, like, what is eShops close down? Because that also brings me to my next like point with this conversation too, is legacy content. Because that's a pet peeve with a lot of people, including myself, is that through emulation, a lot of games, like a lot of libraries of games, it helps fill those gaps. It keeps preserving them, so it still makes them playable and all that. Again, I'm guilty of that, especially with like Super Nintendo, NES, Game Boy Advance, like some of the easier to emulate kind of stuff. If I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not going to be like, emulators can complain about this, but I can be on the side of like, see the sides of both without like being too critical of one side or the other, because there's both pros and cons of their arguments as well. But yeah, just like, not just Nintendo, but other companies do a poor job with like conserving or legacy content, especially if it's demand. They don't re-release it. You see collections and stuff like that too. With Nintendo, they have the NSO, which definitely expanded over time with new consoles as well. But I feel like recently did a strip feeding just a tiny bit, and there's a lot of stuff they just don't release. So it's like when a company's like giving less than a handful at a time of games, and it's very like little tiny droplets. Like, what about the rest of the games? And there's also the stuff that Nintendo's pulled with some of their limited releases with legacy content too. Like there was that Fire Emblem. They actually localized the very first NES game. I think the first Game Boy. I think they released it on Game Boy Advance as kind of like a updated, or I forget how it was released in the U.S. or when it first did. But their first game. I mean, what's cool about it is like, oh, it's limited and all that. I think even if you bought like a collector's edition, it's just like a code to download it. And a big example people point to is the Super Mario 3D All Stars, and that was good. But I saw a meme like paying zero to emulate it. People get Nintendo fanboys get mad. Paying $60 for Nintendo, they're like jumping for joy, which wasn't really the case. Like there's definitely complaints because Nintendo said right from the gate that it was going to be limited release. So a lot of Nintendo fanboys were pissed about that. I think a lot of these collections are basically just dumping ROMs in emulation. You guys are like saying, oh, big companies use emulation when they do re-releases or collections or this or that, or like you see the arcade, whatever ports or collections for whatever system on Steam or Nintendo, what have you. But yeah, and then I think even $60 is kind of a steep price for essentially slightly upgraded. Which although I can see with Super Mario Galaxy having it work for the Switch first, since that was a Wii game. So I kind of wish I was cheaper, but at least you have it, and yeah, it's like we don't choke down whatever Nintendo gives us. Like we're happy little children to get whatever droplets we can get. So we definitely complain. I think sometimes Nintendo fans complain more about Nintendo than non-Nintendo fans and all that. But I think it's also kind of a shame with at least the Switch when it comes to legacy content, because I feel like Nintendo did a lot better job with previous generations. Like with the Wii Shop and the eShops on 3DS and Wii U. Had a lot of like easily to get games like, oh, you have a bunch of Game Boy Advance games, or you can buy these N64 games, or I'm not sure if did they even do up to GameCube. I didn't get the Wii U, so I don't think so. And then also like you see like the updated re-releases like Skyward Sword, for example, or Link's Awakening. What is it? Advance Wars was, I guess you can say it was kind of on a remake. So it's kind of cool, but it just gets really annoying too because like we want to play these games, like give these games to us, and yeah, I'm not sure how hard it is to just like make it work for the Switch or make it work for like modern PCs or stuff like that. Even if it's like a essentially just dumping the ROM and putting some essential quality of life updates or making sure it functions and all that. Because I think some of my issue with that is with some emulators, like more of the modern one. I haven't played around with some of the really modern ones, but like the PlayStation 2 one, and even like Project 64, like some of them have issues with like performance, or it looks kind of like artifacting, or glitchiness, or sound, or frame rate, and there's complicated settings that it probably just me being like kind of a novice when it comes to it, like enough to like know that there's options but not quite what works, or try and play around and make it work, or Google and see if it works and all that. So I think if it came to like actual companies like having legit ways to rebuy these games, I would lean more towards that, because there's also the risk of like malware and viruses and stuff like that too. And if really you don't know how, I can see someone like having like, again, with like performance and frame rate and stuff like that, that's really awesome. But it like, I don't know, I guess it kind of depends on the emulator, and I feel like the emulators and emulation needs to be around. It always needs to be around to preserve. Like as time goes on, like there's gonna be more and more games that disappear because they just disappear. That's just kind of like the shame of it, or whatever. Another random thing that I thought about, which I wish Nintendo would really do, that maybe other companies would do, would really embrace the retro market, with retro games at least. because I see that a lot. Like a lot of game stores like have retro games. I think it's mostly just trading. Because if it's like it's brand new, I don't think it's going to be sold as accessible in a store. Like you see those crazy eBay listings, which I think over exaggerated and definitely hurt the market. With like, oh, the Pokemon original Red and Blue in box is like $2,000 or something. I don't know. I don't really look at it too much, but I know you can find them, and I know like some companies, at least I heard the idea of like re making reproductions. So it's like basically it's a cartridge that would work on original hardware, and I think you always see that too, like hardware like re produced in a way by other companies, like the NES or the Super NES, and also have those minis. Like I know Nintendo put like for the NES, yeah, the NES Classic and Super NES, and I think PlayStation had one that had some complaints. Like I feel like if it's official and you buy it, it works good. At least you're not gonna get a virus on a computer, and all that. But it'd be cool if they really embrace like they like actually Nintendo produce official reproductions of NES games, of Super NES games. Because cartridges go bad, hardware goes bad over time. If we can just rebuy it, especially new generations of gamers, that would be really cool. So I wish that would be a thing. Like, I guess you could say they have embraced the retro market with like the NES Mini and the SNES Mini, all that. But it would be really cool to meet official cartridges again. That'd be tempting. Some people like appears like to play it on original hardware, but even sometimes when I'm playing on NSO, like sometimes like the games don't feel like they play as well as like with it. Although I think maybe my problem is I'm using the Joy Cons and maybe I need to get more Nintendo Switch controllers, but I don't know. It'd be kind of stubborn because a lot of times I just play in handheld mode just because it's a little bit easier. But yeah, that's one thing. Like, it's a shame what's happening with Yuzu because it seemed like a very competent one, but I think maybe just flying too close to the sun with again having a guide out there, buy them and making money off the emulation through Patreon. I think probably the big thing with emulation, like maybe be very hush or very like careful when it comes to modern consoles and modern generations and all that, because one of the reasons I think that preservation can be a weak argument is like if this Switch is on a shelf, but these games still physically in stores and even eShops, like you're not really feeling a need to preserve. Like eventually there'll be a need to preserve, but it's like you're competing because people would be like, oh, why should I buy this game when I can just like look for it online and get the ROM and use my emulator to play it for free? Like it's supposed to be, no, you're supposed to actually have it to dump it into the emulator, but I would say a lot, maybe even a majority of people will not do that. So it's like you can be like, oh, we don't support piracy, but that's what emulators pretty much do. Again, this like performance stuff. There's like a lot of stuff outside of piracy that's really cool about it as well. But yeah, it's kind of a shame. One random thing I even thought about is I kind of wish, I'm not sure if Nintendo would ever do this, if Nintendo would make a store page for like on Steam and release a lot of the legacy content on Steam, because I'm sure a lot of people will legit buy it, because a lot of like wouldn't want to buy a Switch, even though it's much cheaper consoles compared to others. But if they put like the old libraries, like you can legit purchases for PC via Steam or maybe some other storefront, that would be really cool. Like maybe Nintendo could make their own, but it may be too cumbersome to have their own store page or storefront compared to like I think the Epic Games, and I'm not sure if Ubisoft is still up or whatever, but say, hey, we can be a publisher and have a page on Steam where you can buy a bunch of old games or collections or whatever, which is cool because I've seen like Capcom has collections or Sega and stuff like that too for legacy content. But if Nintendo did that with Nintendo games, that would be really cool. But I highly doubt it. But that's kind of like my 2 cents or so about the controversies, the settlement, the lawsuit with Yuzu and Nintendo. So next thing I want to talk about on this podcast is a little bit on cancel culture. Um, and it's one of the things that kind of have mixed ideas or feelings about, because I think a lot of it is kind of valid when there's like, examples of not cool stuff going on, whether it be like some sort of abuse or whatever, not to get into those big trigger words that YouTube doesn't like. But also, I feel like this part of the culture that like finds whatever they can to cancel somebody or find a reason to. I found this term on stumbled across this term online, cancel pig, which I actually can really understand and enjoy the term, because this was like a few weeks ago. Because I feel like a lot of people like try to bait opinions just to bait opinions and all that, and then find a reason like if they agree with it or not. I'm trying to think. There was some. I like his channel. I don't follow his Twitch streams as much, but I do really love when he uploads his whatever videos on YouTube. But Luthero and all that. I forget what the post was, but someone was like, was asking him his thoughts about the Middle East with Israel and Gaza and stuff like that. And of course he didn't respond, but I think someone else kind of like chimed in, like, why are you asking that kind of stuff? Like, and I think that's what like cancel pig kind of like mindset is like. You don't care about the Thuro's opinion. You don't care about this content, whatever you want to call it. You don't care about his opinion. You just care about baiting opinion from someone who has a strong, I guess it's a bigger online presence. So you can decide like, if it aligns with your value, you can happily be on your way. If it doesn't, you would want to cancel them. So I think a lot of times with these hot topic issues in the world, especially, like you don't need to express your opinions out there if it doesn't really add much to it. And I know, especially with what's going on with over there, it's really I don't know. I'm almost like at a loss for words for saying like people can really feel very, very, very strong about it. And I think you have to just tread carefully, or just better yet, just don't tread at all. Because you see like whatever actor, voice actor, comedian, celebrity said this or that, whether it be for this side or that side, like people are gonna get mad either way. And I don't know, it's like unless you're like a world leader or a world government or something like that, like you can't really do too much, but then people could judge you for what you say and say, oh, you support this or you support that, you support bad things, you don't support the good people who are suffering and all that. I think the most important thing is like a lot of times is like don't engage. I almost got in this mindset, like not that I get too much into like current events or especially hot button issues, but sometimes on X Twitter, like I almost catch myself. Well, I do, like just don't engage, like don't send a tweet, don't make a comment. If it doesn't add much, like sometimes you like to have a little snark, or sometimes your additional 2 cents, whether you agree or disagree and stuff like that. And sometimes it's just not worth it. And I don't know, I have like the mindset like I did with my ex is that do not engage. But yeah, I feel like, especially since we have these quote unquote cancel pigs out there that just want to bait out opinions, and like it's not about what this person feels or thinks. It's like we want that opinion out there so we can tear you apart or support you, or just be on a merry way. Like if they're like, okay, I agree with that, I'll be gone, and someone else will disagree and then get more butthurt and stuff like that too. And then they're like, oh, they got fired from this project or they got canceled because they had this opinion about that, and that's not good, or at least we don't agree with it, or our values don't align with it. So I think the cancel pig term kind of fits. I almost want to say cancel sheep because it almost feels like it's almost like a brainless thing. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Even though it's not related to the post. Again, like maybe if you were someone who's more into discussing hot button or world issues like that, if that was your thing, or again, maybe if you were in government in some way, whether it be like a senator, governor, president, a world leader, and stuff like that too. But it's like, and if it doesn't really matter, and people are just going to get mad at you or agree with you, like I think the people who are going to get mad at you are going to speak the loudest. So that's what you have to watch out for. So, and I know, especially when it's unrelated. I think that's what kind of grinds my gears too. Is like if it's unrelated, like someone said, "Oh, it's sad what's happening in whatever." Like, "Oh, what do you think about that more?" Like, versus like, "Oh, here's an update on my video. Like, we plan to release it next month." And like, "Oh, what do you think about this?" Like, don't like twist it into like some weird forced segue to discuss something that you want to discuss. Or at least get that opinion so you can judge it for yourself for the sake of judging it, and you can either cancel or just be on your way. So I think that's what cancel culture has been kind of boiled down to, at least recently for me. This is my little bubbles of the internet. Again, like, there is valid times where people need to be held accountable. So I think when there's like abuse, criminal stuff, even, or not just, again, not throw big trigger words out there, but like when people do really bad stuff and it comes to light, I can see being canceled, being I know it's kind of like brought to justice as well. Like, I know saying, "Oh, being justice warriors" or something like that can be a little cringy term, but got my thoughts about it. But I gotta keep that in my back pocket, a cancel pig, because again, you see examples of that is like you don't care, you just care about getting mad or not and all that. So my thoughts about that. And next thing I want to talk about is wokeness, at least the term wokeness, which I feel like I talked about before, but again, no one's really listening. But I feel like just kind of like just because you see a lot more, especially with like AI. God, I almost feel like I need to mute Elon Musk on X. Don't call it Twitter because it is Twitter. No matter what even though he paid 44 billion to change the name, it's still Twitter. But I don't know. It's just almost mind-boggling to see this like guy. I know he does big things like with Tesla and SpaceX, but I'm not sure how much he really contributes. I think maybe just financially contribute. I just random tangent, but who is this dog designer on YouTube? YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever, Twitter, X, because like Elon is constantly reposting their tweets, a post, whatever. And it almost feels like it's like his alt account, because I see things around like Elon having alt accounts here and there, and all that. But like it almost gets kind of annoying to. I don't know. I think use wokeness in a dismissive way because I think a lot of valid points. Like going back to AI, I can definitely see that because there's that big uproar in a sense with the Google AI art. I'm not sure if it's just Google AI or if it uses something else like Dolly or something like that. And big thing is that it was like when it came to generating people, like kept generating people of color and not white people. And especially like the issue with that is like when it did prompts like Vikings or the American founding fathers, or even like popes of the past or something like that. Like people like historically are white, like it's being historically inaccurate by making people of color. Like if we had George Washington, well, not George Washington Carver, but just George Washington, the first president, making him black and all that, or female or whatever, making the founding mothers. And I almost thought it was fake. I thought people were just like making their own prompts and then like getting rid of the prompts and refilling like that. Like, oh, like they made a prompt like make the founding father this black, and then change that when they actually posted and like Photoshop it to force it. But I guess it's apparently true from what I saw being reported, especially I think statements by Google or Google AI. And I think it was just like overcompensating way too much and all that, which kind of says something. Like if you have to overcompensate for like racial representation, like that might say something. But again, it's almost like intentionally being inaccurate for the sake of not plastering white people and all that. I think other things like when it comes to wokeness, I feel like it gets thrown out too loosely, and I think that's what kind of grinds my gears a little bit, is that when it's used loosely, as almost like a dismissive way, I think a lot of it's like making a fight out of something that doesn't exist. like, hey, we have a gay character in this cartoon, and like, oh, you're trying to make kids gay, trying to promote their agenda and stuff like that, or you want to have a strong female protagonist, like, oh, you making Bosco, or you like forcing this or forcing that, or like, hey, we want to do this interpretation of like Snow White but make her black or something, or like Little Mermaid. That's it, like, a good example, making Little Mermaid black. Oh, that's this wokeness, and so they go. Hey, I've never seen the movie, so I can't say for its quality, but you know, if you want to do different things, like even race swapping, I think that's fine if the final product is good, because I can see like, oh, we want buzzwords or like make headlines with it. Like we instead of a decision making headlines, we just want a decision to just part of the movie, and we want the final product to speak for itself. Like let's care about the movie versus like let's care about how Ariel acts as a character throughout the movie versus what she physically looks like as being black instead of white, like the old Disney cartoon and all that. And it's like, oh, now a kid's gonna be force fed this or that, or I think a lot with like LGBT and stuff like that too. It just get annoying because a lot it's like we just want to be acknowledged, like we just want to exist, especially with trans too. Like I feel like that's where it gets the worst from what I've seen, especially when there's laws around that can roll back the clock in terms of trans rights, people's rights, and all that. Saying like even like the Mr. Beast, I think it's Chris that transitioned to hormone. I know hormone replacement therapy, but I believe they're transitioning. If not, maybe non-binary. I feel bad for not even doing my homework, but like, oh, now you're gonna have kids take hormone therapy and stuff like that, or encourage or kids to be trans or non-binary. Like, we just want to freaking exist, and I don't relate to a lot of that just because that's not me. Oh yeah, I gotta. I mentioned that before, like the cisgender thing, like with Elon Musk, you know, calling the slur and stuff like that too. And that's funny. I feel like I don't know, it's like the people who like call people snowflakes, and then when you criticize them, they're the snowflake kind of thing. So I don't know. It's just crazy times in a sense that people get over. I think just people getting overly upset on small things, especially if these small things is like we just want to exist. We just want representation. We just want to do our thing. We're not forcing you to watch our cartoons. We're not forcing your kids to watch it. We're not forcing kids to change because they watch it. We just putting out art. We just putting out our expressing ourselves. We just trying to live the human experience. And like it's like no, all that. But yeah, that's why I don't know. I think a lot of times when I hear like wokeness, it almost like triggers my brain to like not take it seriously or just like be in that sour mood. Like, okay, are you just be dismissive? Are you just complaining or whining, or are these actual valid points? Because I think a lot of the time it's not, but that's just me. And that's the end of the podcast. So again, this is Stupid Solo Podcast. I had a little fun with these topics, especially like talking about game emulation, and I don't know, because I feel like some arguments are like very very pro, like oh Nintendo's really really bad and they're really really, and emulation is like needs to be preserved, or you know, it was trying to be crushed or erased and stuff like that. Because I definitely agree with a lot of valid points with emulation. Even at this end, just kind of like it just gets really iffy when it's like current gen stuff, when you know emulating for hardware that's still on the store shelves, or games that are still on the store shelves and stuff like that. But that's just a little me. But anyways, again, the best way to support me in the channel is to like, comment, and subscribe. Do so on YouTube, on X, Twitter, Twitch, whatever, links in the description, all that. But y'all take care and have a great rest of your day. Bye.